In 20 years of driving city buses, Marcus Thompson thought he'd seen every type of passenger, until he noticed the woman who never asked for help, but clearly needed it. Eleanor Martinez rode his Tuesday route with a dignity that masked her desperation, and when Marcus finally understood where she was going and why, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. As Marcus sat across from Jimmy Fallon in the Tonight Show studio, his hands still moved as if gripping a steering wheel and checking mirrors, muscle memory from 2 decades of navigating city streets while carrying the stories, struggles, and hopes of thousands of passengers who trusted him to get them where they needed to go. Marcus Thompson, 48, adjusted his tie nervously as the studio lights warmed his face. He wore his best Sunday suit, the navy one his wife Carmen had insisted he buy for their daughter's graduation, and his hands bore the permanent calluses from gripping steering wheels and the slight arthritis that comes from 20 years of city driving. For 2 decades, he'd driven Route 42 through the east side of Detroit, a path that connected working-class neighborhoods to downtown, carrying everyone from factory workers to hospital employees to elderly residents trying to maintain their independence. Tonight, he was here because a video of him helping a passenger had touched millions who watched a bus driver become something much more important than someone who just follows a route. "So Marcus," Jimmy said, leaning forward with genuine interest, 20 years driving the same bus route in Detroit. That's like being the neighborhood's daily connection to the world, right? Marcus's nervous energy began to ease as he found his voice, his Michigan accent warm with the cadence of someone who genuinely cared about his community. "You know, Jimmy, people think bus drivers just drive buses, but we're really the heartbeat of the neighborhood. I know who gets on at 7 a.m. for the early shift, who takes the 3 p.m. to pick up kids from school, who rides late at night because they can't afford a car." The audience was immediately engaged, understanding they were hearing from someone who truly observed the rhythm of urban life. "What's the most memorable part of driving the same route for 20 years? Marcus's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of someone who found meaning in routine. "The relationships, Jimmy. Mrs. Patterson gets on every Monday with groceries for her disabled son. Tommy Rodriguez rides to community college 3 days a week, always studying in the back seat. I've watched kids grow up, seen people get jobs, celebrated when passengers told me good news." Jimmy nodded, clearly moved by Marcus's perspective on public service. "You're like a moving counselor's office." "Exactly, and you learn to read people. You can tell when someone's having a bad day, when they're worried about money, when they need someone to just acknowledge they exist. A simple, good morning can change someone's whole day." Jimmy's expression grew more thoughtful. "Speaking of reading people, I understand there's one particular passenger who changed how you see your job." Marcus's hands stilled in his lap, and something in the studio atmosphere shifted. The easy conversation took on a weight that everyone could feel, the kind of gravity that comes when discussing quiet heroism. Her name is Eleanor Martinez. She's 73 years old, legally blind, and for 3 years, she rode my bus every Tuesday at exactly 9:30 a.m. The studio audience was completely attentive, sensing they were about to hear something profound. At first, I just noticed her because she was so precise. Same seat every week, always had exact change ready, never caused any trouble. She'd sit quietly in the front seat, holding her white cane, looking out the window, even though she couldn't see much. Jimmy found himself leaning forward, completely absorbed. Eleanor would get off at Mercy Hospital, and I'd watch her slowly make her way across the parking lot with her cane, taking about 10 minutes to walk what should have been a 2-minute walk. Then, every Tuesday evening around 4 p.m., she'd be at the same stop, waiting for the return trip. Marcus paused, his eyes filling with memory. After about 6 months, I started noticing details. Eleanor was getting thinner. She moved slower. Some Tuesdays she looked like she'd been crying. The studio was growing quieter, everyone understanding the weight of what Marcus was describing. "What made you realize something was wrong?" Jimmy asked softly. It was a Tuesday in December, really cold, snowing. Eleanor got on the bus like always, but this time she was shivering, and I could see she only had a thin jacket. After she got off, I found myself thinking about her all day. Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. That evening, when she got back on for the return trip, she looked exhausted. Really exhausted. And that's when I made a decision that was probably against every rule in the bus company handbook. The audience was completely silent now, understanding they were witnessing the moment when policy gave way to humanity. "What did you do?" Jimmy asked. I asked her how she was doing. Just a simple question, but Eleanor started crying. Right there on my bus, this proud woman just broke down. Jimmy stood up from behind his desk, driven by an instinct that had nothing to do with television production and everything to do with recognizing something sacred when you hear it. "What did she tell you?" "She told me she'd been getting cancer treatments at Mercy Hospital for 8 months, chemotherapy every Tuesday. But here's the thing that broke my heart. The bus stop is 6 blocks from the cancer center. 6 blocks that Eleanor had to walk with her cane, in all weather, while dealing with chemo side effects." Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small route map, worn from folding and unfolding. I realized that my route came within 2 blocks of the cancer center, but the city had never put a bus stop there because it wasn't considered a high-traffic area. The audience began to stir, not with restlessness, but with the kind of emotion that demands expression. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Eleanor walking those 6 blocks in the snow, weak from chemotherapy, just trying to get the treatment that might save her life. Jimmy walked around his desk and sat on the edge, eliminating the barrier between them. "So, what did you do?" "I made a choice that could have cost me my job. The next Tuesday when Eleanor got on the bus, I told her I was going to drop her off right at the cancer center entrance." Marcus's voice grew stronger as he continued. "I pulled the bus off the official route, drove the extra 2 blocks, and let Eleanor off right at the hospital door. Cut her walk from 6 blocks to 6 steps. The audience rose to their feet, not in orchestrated applause, but in spontaneous recognition of something profound. They weren't clapping for entertainment. They were bearing witness to compassion in its purest form. Jimmy stood up and turned to face the audience and cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where following rules is often more important than following our hearts. Marcus Thompson reminds us that sometimes the most important route isn't the one on the map. It's the one that leads to someone who needs help." He turned back to Marcus. "How did Eleanor react?" "She cried again, but these were different tears. She said no one had shown her that kind of kindness since her husband died 5 years ago. She said she'd been dreading Tuesdays because the walk was getting harder, but now she looked forward to them because she knew someone cared." Marcus opened his route map, revealing handwritten notes in the margins. But that's not where the story ends. After a few weeks of dropping Eleanor off at the cancer center, I started noticing other passengers watching what I was doing. Jimmy looked at the map with profound respect. "What happened?" Other passengers started speaking up. Mrs. Chen mentioned that her elderly mother had trouble getting to the dialysis center 3 blocks from our route. Tommy Rodriguez said his grandmother needed to get to the eye doctor, but couldn't afford a taxi for the extra distance. Marcus's voice caught slightly. I realized that Eleanor wasn't the only one. There were dozens of passengers who needed me to go just a little bit off route to make their lives manageable. Jimmy slid off his desk and knelt down beside Marcus's chair, understanding that some moments require you to meet people where they are. "What did you do about the other passengers?" "I started what I called compassion stops. If someone really needed to get somewhere that was close to our route, and if it didn't add more, then 5 minutes to the trip, I'd make the detour." Jimmy reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his business card, but this gesture felt different from all the others. It felt like a recognition between 2 people who understood service in its deepest form. "Marcus, I want you to have this. Not because you're a guest, but because you understand something that every person in public service needs to remember. That rules should serve people, not the other way around." Marcus took the card with hands that had steered buses through 20 years of Detroit weather, hands that had chosen humanity over policy when it mattered most. "You know what Eleanor taught me? She taught me that my job wasn't really about driving a bus. It was about making sure people could get to the places they needed to go to stay alive, to get well, to take care of their families." The show ended differently that night. No desk pieces, no games, no comedy segments. Just Jimmy and Marcus talking about service, about the profound impact of going slightly out of your way when someone needs you, about how the most important destinations aren't always on the official map. 3 months later, Marcus wasn't fired for his compassion stops. He was promoted to route supervisor and asked to help redesign city bus routes to better serve vulnerable populations. Eleanor finished her cancer treatment successfully, and now volunteers at the cancer center, helping other patients navigate transportation challenges. The viral video that brought Marcus to The Tonight Show was actually taken by another passenger who witnessed Marcus helping Eleanor into the bus and then watched him drive off the official route to drop her at the cancer center. The video shows the other passengers on the bus smiling and nodding in approval, understanding they were witnessing something special. The episode became one of the most watched Tonight Show segments in history, not because it was funny, but because it reminded viewers that heroism exists in the choice to see people's needs rather than just their destination, to understand that sometimes the most important journey is the one that takes you slightly off course. Marcus still drives for Detroit Public Transit, but now the city has implemented community access stops, additional bus stops near hospitals, senior centers, and other essential services that were previously underserved. The program is directly inspired by Marcus's Compassion Stops and has been adopted by transit systems in 12 other cities. Eleanor's Cancer Center now has a direct bus route, Route 42C, nicknamed Eleanor's Route by regular passengers. The bus stop has a small plaque that reads, "Sometimes the most important destination is the one that helps someone heal." The route map Marcus showed Jimmy contains more than just Eleanor's story. It contains notes about dozens of other passengers he's helped over the years. The veteran who needed to get to the VA hospital, the single mother who couldn't afford cab fare to job interviews, the teenager who needed to reach the community college when his usual bus broke down. Jimmy learned something that night that changed his entire approach to late-night television, that the most powerful stories aren't always the ones that make people laugh. Sometimes they're the ones that remind us that we all have the power to adjust our route when someone needs us to, that sometimes the most important rule to break is the one that keeps you from helping. The Tonight Show continued to entertain millions, but now it also served as a platform for recognizing that every job has the potential to become a ministry when performed with love, that every route we take in life has opportunities to serve others, even if it means going slightly off course. Because Marcus Thompson taught Jimmy Fallon and millions of viewers that true public service isn't about following the schedule perfectly. It's about understanding that sometimes people need you to drive to where they are, not just where the map says you should go. That the most important passengers aren't always the ones who pay the fare, but the ones who need someone to believe their destination matters. The compassion stops that started with Eleanor have helped over 300 passengers in the past year get to medical appointments, job interviews, and family emergencies that would have been impossible to reach otherwise. Marcus keeps a journal of these detours, not for his employer, but for himself. A reminder that every day offers opportunities to change someone's journey for the better. Eleanor still rides Marcus's bus sometimes, not because she needs to, but because she wants to thank him and see the other passengers he's helping. Last Tuesday, she brought homemade cookies for the entire bus. And when a new passenger asked why she was celebrating, Eleanor simply said, "Because this driver taught me that sometimes angels wear transit uniforms and the most important miracles happen between bus stops." Marcus's story has inspired transportation workers across the country to look beyond their official duties and see opportunities for human connection. The Thompson Protocol has been implemented in several major cities, allowing drivers to make reasonable detours for passengers with documented medical needs. The Detroit Public Transit System now trains all new drivers in compassionate transportation, teaching them to recognize when passengers might need extra assistance. Marcus leads many of these training sessions, sharing real stories about passengers who needed someone to go slightly off-route. The Cancer Center, where Eleanor received treatment, has established a partnership with the transit system to ensure all cancer patients have accessible transportation to their appointments. A special Healing Routes program provides free transportation for patients who cannot afford other options. Eleanor's white cane, which Marcus noticed on that first Tuesday, now sits in the Detroit Transit Museum next to a photo of her and Marcus taken on the day she completed her final cancer treatment. The inscription reads, "Some journeys require us to go off the beaten path." The route map Marcus showed Jimmy has been turned into a training tool used in transit systems nationwide, demonstrating how small acts of compassion can transform public transportation from a simple service into a lifeline for vulnerable community members. Each note represents a life changed by someone who cared enough to take a detour when it mattered most. Proving service means going beyond schedules,